Hey, Faith Christian Fellowship, happy Friday, May 15th, 2020. I'm coming to you from a different place, or at least not my normal. Over the last several weeks, I would be filming videos, Sunday mornings and other videos for other reasons. I would be filming from my basement. Some of you have become, those of you that have been watching have become quite familiar with my basement, right? For a while that was sort of necessary, and there, you know what, there may be videos in the future that come from my basement. We've actually learned a lot through this season. We've learned that we can do these types of things, and they might be really great resources in the long run. So it's not as though you'll never see me in my basement ever again, but sort of one, because of the day, and it is absolutely a gorgeous day on this Friday afternoon. One is because of the day, but also number two is it just is more fitting to the theme of this video announcement that I'm making for you today. The outside seems so much more appropriate. Sort of that fresh air, that relief, sort of that it is to be outside. Obviously, we've always been able to be outside, but for today, this is somewhat symbolic to the video announcement. Most of you know this by now, and many of you watched it for yourselves. On Wednesday afternoon, Governor Hogan came and addressed the state of Maryland on the roadmap to recovery that he and his advisors had created. And we, for the last 8 or 9 weeks, we have been abiding by the request of our government on how we assemble. I'm not here to address controversy and whether you think this was the right or the wrong approach. But what I am here to say is that as we have submitted to those decisions up to this point, this week Governor Hogan came out, and I think probably for all of us, to a surprising level, relaxed some of the shelter at home, the limitations that we have been under for a long time. I think we were all hoping that it would at least gradually begin to relax. I think he went further than probably any of us really expected. And as it pertains specifically to the church, we have pretty significant opportunities to make some adjustments and to start to return to some of the natural ways that we have gathered in the past. And so that's what I'm here to talk about. Here to talk about our plan, sort of our own recovery plan as a church. I'm sure some of you have reached out to me and asked, even in the last 2 days. And if you haven't, I'm sure even still, you're thinking a lot about how this affects our church family at Faith Christian Fellowship. So that's why I'm doing this. I shared with you yesterday in an email that our board, the 2 pastors, myself and Pastor David, and then the 5 deacons, Sam Croto, Brian Detzel, Brian Orndorff, Jeff Rowland, and Matt Wilson, we gathered last night for an obviously very important meeting as we start to create our own recovery plan, that we might regather and that we might, sort of return back to some of the natural ways of us doing church, the ways that we know so well. But before I get into that, just for a moment, I want to say this, and I've said it in other places. I said it in the email in a very quick way, and I'm going to try and keep this brief too. But this is a message that I'm going to be hitting hard for the next several weeks and maybe for a few months and beyond, is that more important, if you can believe this, more important than the how, when, and where we resume our gatherings, more important than that strategy and that plan, is the spirit with which we begin to gather again. The spirit, the tone, our attitude is even more important than the details of how, when, and where. And I hope you are feeling that way. I know I am. And I hope that you are recognizing that as the far greater issue in play as we begin to see this. I shared with our board last night that we have gone through 8 or 9 weeks that God intended us to go through for some reason. I believe that in His sovereignty. Whether you agreed at every level or not, the issue is not the controversy. The issue is believing that our God was doing something. And so even we spent several minutes in our meeting just sharing stories with each other and our perspective with each other about what God has been doing, what our testimony of His handiwork in our lives. And I'll share those more. I'm not going to take time on this video to do it, but I'll share those in future gatherings. sort of as a testimonial to the goodness of God and how He has walked with us through that. That needs to be the determining factor. And the guys on the board, they had some really great responses, and I do look forward to including those and maybe even some that you would share about what God has done over these last 8 or 9 weeks. As we go into the summer, as we start to see things resume, as we start to do things maybe in a way that we used to, some of those things, as we start to return, I think we really have to be honest and reflect on what changes have happened to us as individuals and to us as a church because of what we've been through in a good way. What changes have happened? And don't get me wrong, I don't think that there's going to be major changes in all the different things that we do as a church. But what I do want to prepare you for is that we may have learned some things that we need to adapt. We need to really think about how we do church because of what we've been through. Again, in a good way. We gather as a body of people because we love one another, and we are called to spur one another on to love and good deeds. That's why we gather. So if that doesn't help us determine the spirit of our gathering, love for one another and a spurring on of each other to love and good deeds, that has to drive why we get together, why we do the things that we do as a church. If there are changes that come, there's a couple of things that I would share with you. One is change may be required for a period of time, and we don't know how long, because we are going to continue to try and respect as much as we can, respect the orders that we are given, even though they have been relaxed and we are given some new freedoms. Even though that's the case, there are still things that our government is asking us to do, and it sort of affects the way that we do church a little bit. And I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But those changes we may not have control over. But we may also introduce some other changes that are more on our side of things because we've seen the change that God has brought into our lives and how that affects our gatherings. Again, I don't imagine major things, but certainly the possibility of some changes that are ahead of us, both by choice and both not so by choice, just because we are respecting the requests of our governor and our government. So anyway, just really be in prayer about what our regathering looks like from the standpoint of your heart, from your readiness, from the spirit that you bring into our communal activities. Okay, but let me get to the details, and I think this will be really helpful. I hope it will be. As of 5 o'clock this afternoon, a lot of relaxation to the stay-at-home orders. I think the new term is safer at home. So they're still encouraging, obviously, that we limit our movement. But one area that affects us very directly is that they have given a much wider berth to how we gather as a faith-based institution, a church like ours. I believe the specifics are a 50% capacity, which is more than we ever expected, to be honest with you, at this stage. And so we're very thankful for that. So some of you have asked already, and the truth is we absolutely can meet on Sunday, May 17th, this week, based on the change in the roadmap to recovery that Governor Hogan introduced. We could meet, but I want to tell you our decision has been to not meet live in person for one more Sunday this week. Even though we could, we're choosing to do a one final, and I kind of hope that it's our last, but one final strictly live stream event. Different than the last several weeks, I'm actually going to be up at the building. It's going to be a true live stream. It's not going to be recorded messages. It's not going to be any of that. We are really going to be together up at the building, the handful of us that need to be there, the rest of you watching online. But we are going to do one more week of a live stream. There's a couple reasons why we're doing that. One is that it takes a lot to get a ship that has been at dock, kind of at the dock. It takes it takes quite a bit just in general to get that going again. Even though we could, and I'm sure many of you would want to, and you'd be fine if it wasn't perfectly done. But it really does take a lot. And when you add to it the expectations of safety measures, the spacing that we need, the 50% capacity, how are we going to do that? What are the things that really this Sunday seemed like that would be a rush to go right back into it. We'd already planned for, before the governor's announcement, we'd already planned that this week would be another live stream. We're going to keep it that way, and I hope you understand. The second reason, which I want you to not only be reactive to that, but I want you to be proactive in this week's live stream. And what I mean by that is, with the likelihood that it is our last strictly live stream Sunday morning gathering, because of that, that's obviously been our reality for more than 2 months. And because of that, this is a really neat opportunity to kind of use Sunday morning as a time of real reflection as you gather as a family, as you think about the changes that we have ahead of us, you actually use it proactively, that you use it with thoughtfulness and reflection, and that it really becomes sort of a send-off to our live stream. On Sunday, you'll probably hear me say this again, but it really is, let's kind of close this chapter, hopefully for good, but let's close this chapter out well. And we're going to do that by actually having one final live stream. So that's this Sunday. Nothing really happens so far for this coming Sunday, May 17th. It's our final live stream. The next 2 weeks is where things really start to pick up. On May 24th, which is Memorial Day weekend, May 24th, we are going to do a live, in-person, outdoor gathering at the church building on the property. We're going to do a live gathering, and we could not be more excited about that. We're going to have you, if you've been a part of our picnics, if you've been a part of other activities that we have done at the church outside, and sometimes we include a big tent. We're going to set up an outdoor tent once again, and we are going to meet under that tent just on the side of the building. The building will otherwise be closed on May 24th, next Sunday. It will otherwise be closed. The only thing that we are going to obviously give access to is the restrooms, men's and women's rooms. But otherwise, we're not going to do anything inside the building for the day. Right now, the weather shows nice. Obviously, that could come and go. We're not really sure what will happen, but it is going to be at the building, our first live sort of event. Last week was so amazing for those of you that participated in the Lunch on Us, where you drove through on Mother's Day and picked up a lunch and greeted some of our staff and board families, and what a great event that was. Well, even though we're going to go back to a live stream this Sunday, then we're anticipating sort of that excitement of being back together outside for a Memorial Day gathering. Because of our limited spacing, because of the request, again, to continue to operate under social distancing guidelines, we are going to provide 2 live gatherings. One will be at 9:15 and one will be at 10:45. Okay? We're going to probably have the space for anywhere from 100 to 120 people at each of those gatherings. Maybe that will be more than we need at each one. Maybe it'll be tight, and we'll try and, again, follow the guidelines of social distancing. But that is still our plan. How do you like the garbage truck back there? That was a surprise. All right. But that's our plan, is that we'll have 2 gatherings, a 9:15 and a 10:45. I'm choosing 10:45 because that's been our live stream time during the quarantine. And so I thought it would be easiest to have one of the 2 really stick with that time. So the second of the 2 is still going to be at 10:45. We are actually going to try and find a way to live stream that in some way, because there are those of you who will very likely choose not to come. And we support that, especially if you are in risk categories. We completely support you not coming back right away. We encourage those of you who are ready to come back and are excited about coming back, that you extend grace to those who are not ready, and that those of you who are not ready extend grace to those who are ready. This goes right back to that spirit of regathering that we talked about. That we extend grace to one another. There's nothing more that we want to avoid than to divide a church that we desire great unity on, especially since we've been apart, that unity would not result in a division because one group thinks that we should be back, one group thinks we shouldn't, and we just start thinking of each other in those terms. Let's extend grace to one another. So for those of you that choose not to come back for whatever those reasons are, and again, if there are health reasons involved, we support that strongly, of course. But we are going to try, and you'll hear more about this, I'm sure, by next week. We are going to try and find a way to live stream our outside gathering at 10:45. But we are also, so that we can accommodate the spacing requirements, we are also going to do a 9:15 service before that, so that they can work in conjunction, so that we can keep it a little bit of a smaller crowd and not break some of those guidelines that have been asked of us. So May 24th, sorry, Memorial Day weekend, next Sunday, we will be gathering on two gatherings, very much the same gathering, very much all of the things being the same, just simply providing two different times, 9:15 and 10:45. So be looking for information on that for next Sunday. And then finally is the 31st. We're going to go that far with this announcement, and we'll come back with further announcements later about future Sundays after that and other gatherings. But I'm just going to leave it with this. On May 31st, which is the 5th Sunday of May, it's the Sunday after Memorial Day, will be our first gathering, live in-person gathering, back inside the auditorium, back in the building. Probably still very limited in ministry provision. Probably not a lot going on around the building besides the worship gathering. Obviously, the restrooms again would be available, but not a lot of. We're going to really hold the other areas of the building off limits just to keep us abiding by those guidelines. A smaller number with each gathering. We'll probably be doing two, and that's why I say we're probably going to be doing two in this way for a while. We're going to mirror the two gatherings. They're going to look very much the same. We're going to try and keep it as simple as we can. And so two gatherings probably again on Sunday the 31st, and maybe for a while or indefinitely beyond that. But those are things that we're doing to just follow the guidelines. I can't say that enough. But the 31st would be our first in the building gathering since this all began back in March. So we could not be more excited about it. We have more information. We will ask for all of the guidelines to be met. Really, that's more than 2 weeks away. So the guidelines may change between now and then. As they exist today, it would include things like the spacing. It would include things like encouraging if you have symptoms of illness, or if you yourself are at risk, again, making decisions to protect both yourself and others. We're asking you to really be very intentional about that. Even as of right now, public gatherings inside gatherings like this would include a requirement of masks. We're not crazy about it. It's hard, and some of you may disagree that it's even the right approach. I've certainly seen a lot of examples on both sides of the argument that masks are good or they're not good. That controversy is not for me. But what I would say is that if that's what the state is asking us as a public gathering, I think it's appropriate for us to respect that and to take every advantage of our public gathering, but to do so honoring the other things that have been put in place. So I've really gone longer than I wanted to, but there's so much in this that I've wanted to say. One is just to give you the information, right? May 17th, next week, but this coming Sunday, excuse me, is a live stream. It's our final live stream of this chapter. The following Sunday, May 24th, is our first in-person gathering, but outdoors at the property. Outdoors, two services, two worship gatherings, 9:15 and 10:45 that week. And then the following week will be probably again two gatherings, but indoors in our auditorium with very limited ministry things going on except for that main gathering. That just kind of lends itself to questions about specific smaller gatherings, the things that we would typically do throughout the week. Here's what I would say about that. I'm going to be working with all of our ministry leaders who have different ways in which they gather. I think of our youth. I think of adult classes. I think of our young at heart. Obviously, those decisions are still kind of being hammered out. And so I'm not going to speak to them. I'm going to address that with each of those ministry leaders first, and then we will put out more information about how those gatherings, our prayer gatherings, have been just wonderful online. I don't know yet exactly what we're going to do with those, whether we would do in-person gatherings, online gatherings, or a combination. We're still trying to work through those auxiliary areas of ministry. But the next 3 Sundays, hopefully you have the information that you need to begin to plan. And we are so excited to see as many of you as we can see. If you do choose to wait, and we support that decision, if for the reasons that we've talked about, safety and comfort with illness and all pre-existing health conditions, all that type of stuff, if you are in that camp, those of us, probably me and others who gather earlier, need to extend grace to that. If you are in that camp, you need to extend grace to those of us who are eager to get back together. It's a quality of our unity that we accept each other's decisions that are permissible on all spectrum. I would encourage you, no matter what your decision is, to eagerly seek to be back together. That's what we've learned, is that we want to be together. And even if you take a few extra weeks or whatever to get back together, please, look forward to that day. We do, when all of us can be together in one place and and kind of be a family together. So we support your decision to wait, but we also encourage you to prayerfully consider when that time would be that God would seemingly free you up, to come and be a part of whatever it is that we are doing. Again, longer, a lot there. I love you guys. I am so excited. This day just only confirms to me that God has been in and through all of this. I feel such a breath with this, and I hope you do too. Look forward to seeing you online this coming Sunday at 10:45, and there will be much, much more information yet to come. God bless you. We'll see you soon.